So you'll see these images of a mom on her laptop and the kids are running around, but she's still able to get her work done, and in its own chaotic way, it might look glamorous, right? But what you've got to figure out is what you really want. Do you want to build a business to a certain level that requires you to work 40 hours a week? Or do you want a business that is sustainable with 20 hours a week of your working time? You can build out models for that. What does that look like? What is the dollar amount that leads to about 20 hours per week? And start from there. Then once you've hit that benchmark so that you're comfortable, you can start to look at creative ways to increase your revenue, deploy more leverage, make more investments, so on and so forth. The struggle with this notion of balance tends to come from a lack of clarity in what you really want. And you might be feeling like you want competing things at once. For a lot of people who attend mastermind events or networking groups, or who are in these entrepreneurial communities, and you see everybody go, 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 crush it, crush it, crush it, you might feel like you need to want that. But of course you don't. You are free and empowered and given permission to want anything that you want. So I think coming into clarity of, actually, I want a small, simple business with maybe just one virtual assistant who helps me out, does my invoicing, helps me with my website, my social media, whatever, and I want to be able to work 20 hours a week, you can set that up, and then you'll be thrilled. And then this feeling of how do I balance it all will fade away. I think they might have been trying to ask like the reverse. So like they knew they were an expert somewhere, and then they're coming into this new field where they're a newbie. And so if somebody is struggling to adopt a beginner's mindset, I would quickly ask them why they feel that is, or how do they know that they're struggling with that? Do they find themselves not listening to the education, advice, opinions of others? Do they find themselves not curious, not asking questions? Do they find themselves dismissive of information? Do they find themselves trying to talk a lot and prove themselves and prove their knowledge all of the time? If those things are the case, let's put some attention on the intentions behind that and take a step back. Adopting a beginner's mindset theoretically would be very easy. You just have to hang back, listen, ask questions, and be curious. And understand that doing that does not devalue your worth, your knowledge, your expertise in any area. You could also explicitly say to the people that you're around, if this serves you and helps you feel good, oh yeah, I have 12 years of experience in XYZ, but I'm totally new to this and I find that really exciting. That will likely light up the people around you, and they'll want to pour into you and help you out however they can. Imposter syndrome. I could film hours of material about imposter syndrome. So the first thing is, how do you know that you have imposter syndrome? Because when we give something a name, we tend to oversimplify it and just jump into that name as a definition for some sort of behavior. So what are the behaviors that you have that indicate to you that you have imposter syndrome? Are you skirting opportunity? Are you not following up with people? Are you not putting yourself out there? Are you terrified anytime you put some sort of work out there into the world, thinking that everybody's gonna laugh at it and it's gonna suck? The 2 tips for imposter syndrome. 1, the definition of an imposter is somebody who is trying to deceive somebody else for their own gain. If you are not trying to deceive anybody, by definition, you are not an imposter. The second thing I'll say is that studies have shown that it's people in high-level professions and with demanding careers who feel imposter syndrome the most. Albert Einstein felt it. World-class neurosurgeons feel it. So you're in like company. So what does that mean? It means you're doing something challenging. You're likely not gonna feel like an imposter as you wash a dish, right? In the sink, because that's an easy thing to do. I mean, I might feel like an imposter when I do that. But nobody should really feel like an imposter when they're completing an easy task. So it indicates to you that you're doing something big, you're doing something important, and you're doing something that is stretching you a little bit beyond your comfort zone. So now, instead of it being this force or this sentiment that holds you back and bottles you up, It could be something that propels you forward. You could be like, oh shit, yes, this is scary. That means it's important to me. That means I gotta move forward. Why the fuck do you keep self-sabotaging? I don't know. If you did know why, what would it be? There's so many potential reasons for this, but the most important thing that you can do uniquely for you is give yourself the time, space, and consideration to really begin to answer the question of why that might be. It could be disclarity in what you really want. So if you are pursuing something, even if it's noble, even if it's great, but you don't really want it, you're gonna keep fucking it up because you don't really want it. That's the first one. The second could be any sort of downloaded programming or limited beliefs from your family, your upbringing, your community that you grew up in that either consciously, explicitly, or not taught you that success is bad for one reason or another. That you're selfish, you're greedy, you're not focused on the right things, all of this. So if that lives in you somewhere, then of course you're gonna keep self-sabotaging and fucking things up. So I would look to these areas, I would see what's really at play here, but I would highly encourage you to get clarity on and ruthlessly own what you really want, because when you're doing what you really want to do, you're way less likely to fuck it up. And you've got to step in, and this can be gradually. You could start with a toe. You could do it one toe at a time, of owning what you really want, even if the people around you don't get it, even if they think you should want something else. You've got to get ruthless. And when you're ruthless, you will stop self-sabotaging. You don't know how much you can take on versus what's currently on your plate. What I hear when somebody says something like this is, I am creating a problem in my own head. If you would truly like to take on more work, you're able to take on more work. You can do it. Do you want it? Yes or no? If you want to find out what your limit is and what's the maximum amount of work you could take on, okay, let's figure it out. That would be great. Let's get to the point where you're like, oh, if you're a copywriter, I've written 10 letters this month and I'm fucking maxed out. Okay, great, now we know. If you wanted to figure that out, we could figure it out. If you want to just hang back where you're at, that's also totally amazing, and what an incredible gift of clarity. So you don't need to feel the urge to take on more work just for its own sake. Get out of your head, start taking some actions, and let the feedback and reverberation of your actions and how you feel about them clue you into your next steps. How do you get in front of good clients? Well, how do you get in front of anybody? You gotta physically put yourself somewhere where you're in front of them. So what might that mean? Sharing your knowledge, sharing your stories, sharing your questions in the areas where your target market hangs out. Could be a Facebook group, could be Reddit, could be LinkedIn, could be on Instagram, TikTok, anywhere. There's so many communities of business owners, entrepreneurs, and folks who hire copywriters on retainer. So if you want to be in front of them, go physically put yourself in front of them. If you want to get retainer deals out of that, meaning an ongoing monthly contract, then in your stories and in the educational material that you share, even in the questions you ask, you talk about retainer work. So you might say, hey, for this one retainer client I have, I did X, Y, and Z. Now everybody knows that you're for hire and you're for hire for retainers. Guess who's gonna come into your DMs? People who hire folks for retainers. There are different styles with different levels of intensity to the self-advertisement piece of it, right? So you can occasionally, and there's certain groups and communities designed for this, quite literally create an ad offering your own services. Hey, I'm taking on 2 retainer clients this month for X. I'm a badass. Like, here's the link. Hire me now. Make it as simple as possible. Give people the link when you can. So you don't need to go back and forth on 10 prospective calls and write a 20-page proposal. All this is work and energy that you put in for free, and it might not work out. When you can try just dropping the link. If somebody has a question or wants to modify the package that you offer, they'll ask, and you can go from there. That's the more aggressive, like, hey, here's an ad for me type of way of doing it. But you also do it through soft content, soft like information, where again, you say, hey, I did this for my retainer client, I learned X, Y, and Z. Now you're providing value, it's sub-communicated that you're for hire. Even just via the name recognition, you start doing this 5 or 6 times, you interact with other people who ask you questions, you'll start to get known for that type of service that you offer, and more of those clients that you want to be in front of will come your way. How do you go from 0 to enough customers? I think that's a good question because it forces us to figure out what enough is. And that comes back to clarity, like many things do. How big of a company do you want to build? If you want 100,000 customers, that's going to require more infrastructure, team, time, investment. You might not be as profitable while you're building out the systems that support such a large customer base. So is that what you want? If so, fucking great, let's go. Perhaps you realize, hey, I actually only need 20 to 30 customers to get me to this revenue point where I bring home this level of profit and I'm totally fucking happy. I could go home at 5 p.m. and hang out with my kids. I don't have to worry about fires, constant fires that would be going on once you have a 50-person team, 100%. So that is the starting out point to determining what that enough number is. And it may change with time. You might start out with, when your kids are young and they're at home, you want to be there with them, you want to get home at 5 p.m. every day. Okay, so don't try to grow a business with 100,000 customers just yet. Further down the road, maybe your kids are in school, you have more time, you're just feeling more ambitious, you're like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. Then you can start to scale up and your vision and your plan can always change. If you have fear over your ability to bring results for your clients, let's look at the utility of that fear. What does it mean? It means you care. It means you want to bring it. You're not a sociopath, a narcissist. You're not an imposter. You really fucking care. So that's the value of it. Let's take that and remove the limitation. So what's the limitation? You're in your head, you're having ruminating thoughts, you're in a cycle, the fear is paralyzing you, and you're not taking the appropriate action to actually attempt to get the results for the clients, to propel them forward and to propel you forward. So let's take some micro steps. What would be the first toe? What would be the first toe you would move if we're taking the utility of the fear and removing the limitation? You might say, hey, I would really like to write this email sequence for you. I am new, therefore I am going to charge a very small amount of money. I recommend you try to charge instead of doing anything for free, because the client will more value the work because they've invested money into it, and they're more likely to actually use it so that you could see what the results are, which was the whole beginning point of this question, right? How do you see what the results are? So I would recommend you charge a nominal fee. This would be a great offering to do publicly on a jobs board. And it's in fact quite literally how I started my copywriting career. So the first piece of copy I ever wrote after studying and reading other sales letters, not many, a few, was, I can do this. Hire me. This is a letter talking about my services and why I'm a fantastic copywriter. Now, I mentioned the elephant in the room. I said, I have no other samples, but if this letter has compelled you, take a chance on me. And because I have no other samples and because I'm a beginner, I am undercutting the entire market. And I charged $67 a sales letter. And so my first 5 sales letters were for $67 each. I mean, the shortest one had to be about 3,000 words. And the ones that went live, because they all didn't go live, turns out clients spend $67. There's not a huge impetus to them to put it live. They might get distracted and decide to be a media buyer the next day or something like that. But the ones that did go live went really, really well. One of them was the #1 on ClickBank for 5 years, which is this like esteemed metric in the internet marketing community. But all of those clients, because I delivered good work, I was communicative, I delivered on time, I didn't ghost, I didn't self-sabotage, I didn't do all the bullshit that a lot of folks do, they all started giving me referrals. And it was just literally like a referral fountain. And I ran nearly exclusively a referral-based copywriting business for over 10 years, all from that one jumping off point.
That's cool.
Anybody can do this. That's the perfect, use your beginnerness to your advantage. You can step in and say, hey, I'm hungry, I'm a beginner, I really care, I want some work, I'm gonna undercut everybody else, and if this shit that I'm saying right now is firing you up, take a chance on me and hire me. You will get lead flow if you put yourself out there in that way. A sales letter is a piece of marketing material that is designed to sell one, to simplify it, I'll say one product. So if you, wish I had an example around here, but a sales letter would be different from an e-commerce landing page, for example, because you would go to that e-commerce store and you would see a whole bunch of different products and you would pick one and, hopefully buy it from the owner's point of view. Versus if you go to a page that has a lot of information, some storytelling, some claims, some scientific proof, all about a sleep supplement, and that's the one product that's on there, that would be a sales letter. And they could come in long form text formats online, those pages where you scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and you're like, how much is it? Scroll and scroll and scroll, how much is it? I really need to know. There's a lot of strategy and a lot of stuff that's done, even if you're scrolling it really, really fast, that a good copywriter will do to, even if it's subliminal, communicate some things to you that hopefully get you to buy once you scroll all the way down to the bottom and see that it costs $69 a bottle, like they usually do. And they could also be in video format too. So those might be like the 40-minute videos you find online that people will watch 20 minutes. They'll be like, how much is it? I'm losing my mind, blah, blah, blah. But the wild thing is, for as much as the masses might complain about sales material, they perform really well for the right people, because the right people will absorb the right information. If a sales letter is doing its job and crafted to a high caliber, it will inform, it'll entertain, it'll raise curiosity, it'll provide value, and it'll tell you to go ahead and buy the product at the end to get the next step on your journey, your experience. I empathize with putting yourself out there and not getting anything back. That can hurt. Reasonably would cause disappointment and frustration because you care. Now remember, caring is good. Take a breath, lick your wounds. It's okay. Then turn on your analytical mind. Okay, what can be improved here? What is another way that I can try this? I mean, I recently made an offering to a group of about 80 people, and in that same day, only one bought. When you have people live in a room like that, that's considered a failure. And believe me, I was upset. I cried for a long time, and I took it personally. I felt like I am not enough. But my rational brain knows that I'm not enough is not accurate. It's not factually truthful. In fact, you could even play with that self-talk. I'm not enough. Of course you're not enough. You're more than enough. So that slipped into my head, and then I started to feel a little bit better. I also felt a little bit better as I communicated my disappointment with some friends. This is why having like-minded, abundance-minded, helpful people around you who get it is so damn important, because I believe that you should never worry alone. When you worry alone, that's when the spiraling happens, right? But as soon as you can open up to a friend, somebody you trust, somebody who really cares about you and who gets it, they're able to say, hey, I understand that you feel this way, but look, like, maybe you could try it like this. And then my wheels start turning. Oh, maybe I could try it like this, or I could try it like this. Now I've got a ton of different things to try, and I understand that, okay, this one door, I might get 2 sales. This other door, no sales. Fourth door, 10 sales, so on and so forth. So take a beat. Your reasons are valid and rash and reasonable. Lick your wounds and then figure out, okay, what's my next play? Because remember, shoot or shoot. Shoot or shoot, winners win. So are you a shooter or not? Guess what? Sometimes shooters miss. You have to shoot again. So I would tell yourself that mantra, winners win, shoot or shoot, and go ahead and take your next shot. Blank page syndrome. So there are a few things you can do with blank page syndrome. The first is write something easy, because confidence means your trust in your ability to complete a task. Therefore, the easier the task, the higher your level of confidence will be. So there's a lot of boilerplate sales copy out in the world. Things like a guarantee, things like a welcome email, even a native ad is really short and sweet. So I would start the writing with something easy, something as easy as you can. Then, as you begin to do that, understand that sometimes writing is like turning on an old faucet and you have to get the sludge out. And you might hate it. Like, I'll write something that I know is sludge and I'm like, ugh, this is sludge and I hate it. But I know what I'm getting towards, and that's the clean water that's gonna come out once the sludge does. So you could give yourself a time limit. I mean, can you not endure anything for 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes? So you say, fuck it, I'm gonna turn on the timer and I'm gonna write for 10 minutes, even if it's all sludge, that's gonna be okay. 9 out of 10 times, 19 out of 20 times, you'll likely continue writing and you'll get past the sludge. Now, to the question of wondering if your writing is good enough, one of the best cures I have for that is to keep writing. Because the more you write, you get into more and more flow, and the better the writing tends to get. And you'll usually hit on a little something, whether it's a line or a phrase or a concept, that you're like, ooh, there it is. And that's the moment that you get that positive reinforcement of, oh, I am good enough, and this is good enough. For all of the other stuff that you write, you might have to purge some, cull some, edit some. That's all part of the writing process. Editing is a huge part of the writing process. So to immediately judge what you've written in your generative state doesn't really serve you. Instead, I would look at that initial work as, okay, what's good here? What could I play around with? What's interesting to me? What's powerful? So on and so forth. Feast and famine. Why do so many freelancers, entrepreneurs, business people, and even humans in general go through these cycles of feast and famine? One comes from a lack of clarity. Because if you have clarity in your long-term goal, which should be really juicy, defined, and solvable. So I'm talking something like, I want 100 new customers by next year. That's really nice and solvable. You can solve for that. Versus, I want like this great company, which is not solvable. You can't solve for that. When you have that juicy, clear, very solvable goal, then you might go like this, and you probably will, right? This is how things move. But notice the trend. As long as the trend keeps moving to that goal, then you are on track and you're okay. And then all the little bumps in between are simply part of the process and the fabric of life, quite literally. So getting clarity there is going to help you deal with feast and famine. If you don't have that clarity, then you don't have a North Star, and you might end up, and then you feel like shit, and you might even compound the loss and go further down and go further down and go further down. Organization is the second piece. So when you're disorganized and when you don't have a plan and you're taking purely what comes at you, then you'll have cycles where, okay, it booms, a lot of clients are coming your way, or your offer is doing really well and you're getting a lot of sales, but you were not organized or prepared for the next step, so everything falls off a cliff. If you're a freelancer and you have this nice influx of client work and you spend the next 3 months fulfilling it, but you had no plan or organization to bring in new clients or follow up with existing clients to turn that boon of clients into retainer work, ongoing work, something sustainable, then that's where the famine comes in and everything crashes down. You will have completed all your work and then you're like, oh shit, what now? So that came from disorganization and poor planning. So you got to fix that. How can you build up entrepreneurial skills to create freedom? There's a presupposition there that entrepreneurial skills would create freedom. They certainly could, but they're not the only way. So if what you're really after is freedom, then you need to double check that building up entrepreneurial skills is a aligned and efficient path to get you to freedom. If so, then there is a wealth of incredibly good educational material out there on how to be a good entrepreneur, how to grow and evaluate a company, how to start from the beginning. Because there are literally a gazillion ways that you could become an entrepreneur, I would first tap in here and try to get a sense of what your desires and your proclivities are. Do you really like branding? Do you really like writing or copy? Do you really like service-based businesses and giving value to clients? And it needn't be set in stone. You could always change and you could always pivot, which is a huge part of being an entrepreneur, knowing when and being adaptable and resourceful enough to change given the feedback and data that comes in from the marketplace. But find a foothold, try something out, absorb a lot of material, and you can't be afraid to take a chance on it, because entrepreneurialism is all about taking chances, seeing what happens, modifying, and taking another chance. Shooters shoot.